What's up, guys? I'm D.I.Y. Dale. Thanks for tuning in. This video is dedicated to those guys that love the 3000 GT platform, the Dodge Stealth platform, or any car enthusiast that's always had a big horsepower goal. I will start with how this all began. I bought a Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR-4 when I lived in Michigan. It was a 1992. An engineer at Lincoln owned it. The guy was younger, around my age, so I bought it when I was about late 20s, early 30s, and he garage kept it. He was the second owner. I'm the third owner. Originally came from California, then it made it to Michigan, and then from Michigan to Ohio. The car ran well, and then something happened. I was getting a lot of heat sink. Didn't have the money at the time. Didn't know anybody that really worked on these platforms. And then started searching around when I lived in Michigan and found Jared at Higher Standards in Chardon, Ohio, which, looking back now, and me and him have talked about it, I was referred to Jared when Jared was building cars out of his own personal garage, that this guy is a mad scientist. So fast forward, I moved back to Ohio, where I'm originally from. I meet up with Jared. I sink a bunch of money into the car. He brings a JDM motor in. Bigger turbos built out of California, new injectors, just a whole bunch of work that this car needed to get to the goals I originally wanted. So we got 586 at the crank, about 484 out of the wheels. We got documentation to prove all that. So then fast forward to 2023, my wife and I bought a property and we decided to build a wedding venue and winery to get married in. So that's where all of our money went. Well, a little bit before the wedding, a bunch of my buddies were coming over to help, and one of my best friends said, hey, take me for a ride in the Mitsubishi. So me being excited, I never warmed up the car. I really just pulled out of my driveway and got on it, and I spun a bearing almost immediately. Couldn't believe it. Barely limped it home. Within, I don't know, a week or so, I got it on a trailer, took it to Jared's. Come to find out, it was a spun bearing. Now, all of my funds have gone to this wedding venue. Check us out, thebluebellbarn.com, for the last 2 years. Now I have enough money to kind of do the build of my dreams, which was I always wanted a 1,000 horsepower car, and that's our goal. We're going to shoot for 1,000 horsepower at the crank, 800 at the wheels. Jared from Higher Standards, like I said, this guy is an absolute genius. I've never met anybody that not only builds the car to the point where he understands how to tune it. Every part that he puts on that car, he's thinking, okay, here's what kind of fuel and air I need to run. Every single ounce of his effort that he goes to installing it is backed by his brain of understanding what it's going to do. So I'm headed there now. We're going to drop off a bunch of money. I'm going to take a bunch of footage there for you guys. Hopefully get Jared to talk about the car a little bit. I'll show you around his shop. And then from there, we're just going to keep you guys updated on this build. It's going to get sent out. The motor's got to get pulled. It's got to get clean. So bigger turbos, fuel injectors, better pistons, rings, all that good stuff. But then prior to all of this, actually, I paid for, in full, labor and a suspension all the way around, which it happened probably a week before my spun bearing happened. So not only am I getting all new motor and a bunch of good stuff that we kind of felt like the car needed to not only sustain but handle all this power, but we're getting all new suspension in as well. So stay tuned, guys. This video's going on about 4 minutes. I don't want to be too long, but hit me up if you have any questions. Hit Jared up if you have any questions. And yeah, stay tuned. Back at it again, and we finally made it to Higher Standards Performance Shop in Chardon, Ohio. Jared just got done doing a bunch of paperwork for me. Essentially, we're wrapped up on payment. If any change orders come along, obviously we got to take care of that. But Jared's going to get on here. He's going to break down kind of everything we did in the past, the goals that we reached initially, how I made the mistake and spun the bearing, and then our goals going forward. There's a lot going on with this project, but the great thing is we covered a ton of stuff that were issues in the past that really aren't going to be issues now going forward. At the same time, we are going to be selling a bunch of parts from this previous build. With that being said, there wasn't many miles on it. I drove it to car shows, got on it a little bit, but other than that, I mean, less than 2,000 miles on all these parts. So stay tuned, guys. We'll talk to you soon. All right, Jared. Thanks for letting me come out, man. Can you give everybody, a little backstory on where we left off regarding horsepower, and then, take it into kind of where we're headed with this thing?
Absolutely, Dale. So we left off with 481 all-wheel horsepower and 485 all-wheel torque previously on the stock engine. Fast forward a year after that from Dale driving it, we noticed that it was making a little bit of noise in the bottom end. We wanted to check it out for Dale, so we had him bring it in for an analysis, and we discovered that one of the rod bearings was slightly fatigued, and sure enough, that was discussion for a motor build to put some stronger parts into the bottom end moving forward so Dale can actually enjoy some even more horsepower from where we left off. Dale took a break from the car for a little while, and then now he's ready to get back in the saddle on the car again, have us go through everything. And we're also going to be upgrading the suspension with all Volt parts and everything like that, TN coilovers, several other upgrades to manage the engine a little bit better as far as some engine management, along with a bigger fuel system, some more modernized, updated parts since we last left off. And we're going to be shooting for about 600 to 700 all-wheel horsepower on our dyno, which should get them to about, on our dyno, that's about 850-ish horsepower conservatively. And they'll have a motor that will actually be able to live slightly beyond that as well if he chooses to make more in the future.
That's awesome. I got a couple questions. What are we doing regarding the fuel management? I know we talked about going OEM, but then you essentially created your own fuel management system. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So originally on Dale's car, we were on MAF translator, which was a very basic, it was a Gen 2 translator, which basically acted as like a SAFC from a long time ago, along with just adjusting the MAF. So we are parting ways with that now that we're in 2025. He talked to me about some different options and price areas that we could be in for engine management, and we were going to go Haltech 2500 Elite on it, but it's also a little pricey. We have to do a lot to the build as an overall amount, so he wanted to run my engine management system because it does a lot for his needs as it is, and didn't really see the reasoning to be able to spend a little bit more money to go that route. So that's what we're going to put him in as far as our engine management, and it'll be able to do just fine for what he's trying to achieve with the car.
We talked about all these different turbos that are out there, different sizes. Now, in the past, we had obviously we ran smaller turbos than what we're putting on there.
Mm-hmm.
What brand turbos are we running now? And then can you give us some feedback, just like why you chose those?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember which brands per se. On the actual older turbochargers. They were 15G billet compressor wheel turbos. I believe the company that actually did those upgrades is not in business anymore, but he's really well known from a long time ago, so we chose to give him a shot. The business was in California that did them. I can't quite remember the name from back then. However, we're going to be going with Airshy 20T HL turbochargers this time around, so then that'll give them a little bit better chance at hitting the target horsepower.
No, that was awesome. Now, when we go to the dyno, I mean, what parameters are you looking at when you tune this thing? I mean, I call you a mad scientist, so I'm a big believer in the parts you put on. You already kind of have a game plan of how it's going to tune. I mean, what are you looking for?
Just like any tuning strategy, when you first get the car, I mean, you go through all the initial setup phases. We're setting up the new injector data, battery offset, differential pressure for the tuning parameters as far as injection goes. It's sequential injection, but still going to be in waste spark on our engine management system for the ignition side of things because of the amount of inputs our engine management has. So that's kind of how the setup of the ECU goes as far as from a wiring standpoint. But basically, once we get it fired up and idling and everything and get all the initial parameters set, we will then go off to the dyno and then basically strap it down, start to do some initial like hold speed targets and stuff like that in the dyno to see where she's living as far as VE table is concerned and fuel trims and everything like that. Once we populate that at different mile an hours to get a smooth transition of fueling and have the timing conservative, we can then make a first whack on just wastegate pressure on low boost to see where everything's at as far as parameters go. Then obviously you just kind of sneak up on it as you keep going up the ladder to make the maximum horsepower that the operating system will allow, along with the fuel system and what the engine is capable of as far as the build process goes.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions I got right now. Thanks, Jared. And, we'll keep these guys updated with the build. You'll get it in here, within the next couple of weeks, kind of get it in the shop and start tearing down and things like that.
Yeah, mainly it would be to get it in, take the engine out. Machining processes have to happen, so there'll probably be a huge break in the action, obviously, after the teardown, because then it'll have to be machined and all this other stuff going on while we process Dale's car and a few other customers. And then we will have a lot more updates once the engine actually comes back to show like the progress updates and everything like that.
All right. Thanks, Jared. We'll talk to you guys soon. Okay, guys, you heard it from the man, Jared himself. Hopefully we summarized what's going on, the direction we're headed. And if you have any questions, reach out to me, reach out to Jared. We're going to continue with this video type process. And, once again, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. I want to give you a background about how I'm able to afford these things, because that question may come up. And I want people to understand that this money isn't just, given, it's really earned. You got to go out there, figure your shit out, work hard, build the income up, etc. So a little quick review of my history and career is played football at Heidelberg University, D3 school. We were ranked in the nation when I played there. I learned a lot about discipline, being a young man out of college, had a lot of my shit together, was really focused, got a job with Penske Truck Leasing out of the Cleveland area. From there, I went for a position to be a branch rental manager in Chicago, oversaw 3 offices, hired kids out of college, trained them to be young leaders, etc. I did that for about 7-8 months. My district rental manager, who was the guy above me, he got let go. I became the interim district rental manager for 3 months. And during that 3 months, everybody loved working with me. They loved my leadership. I grew all the numbers in a positive way. But little did I know that they were hiring somebody from outside the company that was older than me to take over that district rental manager position. They were just kind of waiting for him to close off his previous employer and leave on a good note there. So with that being said, I went for the interview for district rental manager. I didn't get it. I was pissed, especially because everybody that worked underneath me at this time, they wanted me to get that job. And, unfortunately that didn't happen. And, I was able to get a job in pharmaceutical sales, where one of my best friends kind of got me in the door with an interview. I then moved from Chicago to Detroit, took over a territory that was collapsing there. They said, hey, you got 6 months to turn that around. I turned that territory around in Detroit, did that for 4.5 years there. And then somebody quit in the Cleveland area. My boss called me and said, hey, so-and-so quit. do you want to come back home? I'm still going to be your manager. We just need this territory in Cleveland kind of ramped up and turned around again. So I said, sure. I committed 3 years to the company back home in Cleveland, where I wanted to go anyways. And during that time, COVID hit. When you're in pharmaceutical sales, you're going to a lot of the specialty offices or offices that you're working with, and they shut everything down essentially. Now, during COVID time, that company that I was working for started pushing the vaccine. They said, you have to get your 2 vaccinations or you can't work here, etc. I voiced my opinion loudly and proudly, especially coming from the pharmaceutical world, where I seen the backside of everything that insurances did to get approved, how the government, once they paid for something, pharmaceutical companies would target those doctors that had that insurance coverage. And so I just knew there was a lot of behind the scenes that people didn't understand out there, and I wasn't buying it. So they didn't like that. They didn't like that I pushed back. They didn't like that I spoke up for my team members. And they ended up putting me on a PIP, personal improvement plan. And then my boss, my direct manager, said, hey, Dale, they don't like what you're saying. There's nothing I can do. The personal improvement plan isn't really an improvement plan. There's no way you can get out of it. You need to start looking for a job. So that's what I did. I started my own home remodeling company before this even all happened, and that was kind of my exit strategy sooner or later anyways. But it kind of had to speed things up. God put me in a position where I made a lot of money at that publicly traded company. I punched a ticket with a large chunk of cash. Me and my wife bought a beautiful home on 8 acres, and I've been running my home remodeling company out in the field since. So I'm out there in the last 5 years. Well, it's 5 years old, the company, but I've been out there the last 2.5, 3 full time. And we've gotten to a point where we take on a lot of projects, everything from kitchens, bathrooms, basements to home additions. And just dropped that money off to Jared. Well, guess where I'm going? It's Saturday. I'm going to help our drywall crew. They need a little help with something. And I also forgot an outlet that needs to go outside on its own separate 20 amp breaker. So I got to run something called a home run all the way back to the panel before he puts drywall up. I'm going to knock that out. And then after that, I actually have to go to a little side job that I did. Install the hot water tank for a buddy. They're on a well system, and their water is smelling of sulfur. And that tends to happen when you run on well water sometimes, even with a water softener system. So we're going to put a special anode in there that essentially gets rid of that smell. I'm going through all that, guys, because at the end of the day, you can't have fun. You can't buy all the shit you want unless you work hard. You do the right things, listen to people. I'm a big believer in doing simple better. Show up on time, leave late. And there's going to be people that watch this video and hear this rant at the end about, I don't know, oh, it's not that easy. No fucking shit, it's not easy. I just told you I moved all over the country, gave up essentially my years of my 20s of not partying with friends, going to the clubs all the time. Now, don't get me wrong, I did some of those things when I came back to Cleveland to visit, but I was isolated in Chicago. I didn't know anybody. I was isolated in Michigan. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a pot to piss in. I wasn't from a family with money. And actually, since we're on this warpath I'm going on, I put a down payment on a home for my mom because she got evicted from her place. And then my dad had a stroke when I was in high school, and he lives with me. He was in a nursing home for 10 years. My goal, one of my first goals out of college, was pay off my loans and then buy a house and get my dad out of a nursing home. So that's what I did. So after all this is said and done, boys, I got to go home, make sure my father's okay, make sure my beautiful wife is okay, who allows me to do this crazy shit. I know she has a plan of moving furniture around this evening. We got to put the new carpet down in the living room. So yeah, hard work pays off. Stay committed. God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will keep you updated and ask any questions you want. I'm open door.